For 1,000 years it was seen as the center of the world, an unbreakable fortress of civilization. This colossal power which conquered and tamed the Mediterranean ultimately turned against itself. How did an empire so vast manage to destroy itself? Historians have searched for the answer to this question for centuries. Rome was not built in a day, and it did not fall in one either. In this video, we will examine the true causes that led the empire to its collapse. From the fading footsteps of the legions and empty treasuries, to palace intrigues and barbarian invasions, Rome's heart did not beat in the city of Rome, but in the will of the emperor. However, from the 3rd century onward, that heart began to beat irregularly. The darkest chapter in Roman history was the era of the barracks emperors. During this period, the army no longer protected the empire, it murdered its emperors. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors were assassinated. This political chaos destroyed the continuity of the state. Merit gave way to bribery, and statesmanship was replaced by a desperate struggle for survival. The empire was betraying itself. Wars were expensive, and the bureaucracy was insatiably greedy. The Roman economy was built on conquest and slave labor. When expansion came to a halt, the flow of plunder and slaves dried up as well. To cover rising expenses, emperors reduced the precious metal content of silver coins. This triggered one of the first major hyperinflations in history. The Roman denarius became nearly as worthless as a piece of paper. Trade collapsed and the population turned to barter. Burdened by heavy taxation, farmers abandoned their land. Rome could no longer sustain itself. Emperor Diocletian realized that Rome had grown too vast to be governed from a single center, and he divided the empire into two, the Western and the Eastern Roman empires. What initially appeared to be a wise decision ultimately marked the beginning of the end. As Constantinople rose as a new and powerful capital, ancient Rome and the Western provinces were left to their fate. Cooperation and solidarity between East and West gradually turned into rivalry and hostility. Resources could no longer be shared, and the Western Roman Empire was left alone, helpless and exposed. The powerful legions that had once been everything to Rome were no longer there. Roman citizens no longer enlisted in the army. As a solution, Rome began hiring Germanic tribes as mercenaries. These soldiers were not loyal to Rome, they were loyal to money. The Roman army gradually transformed. Battle tactics were forgotten, discipline weakened. The sword that once protected Rome had become a force that now threatened the empire itself. The Hunnic armies advancing from the east shattered the balance of Europe. Fleeing before Attila, the Goths, Vandals, and Franks pressed against the borders of Rome. This was not an invasion, but an act of desperation, a struggle for survival. Rome, however, was unable to cope with this massive wave of migration. The borders were crossed with alarming ease. Barbarian tribes, first entering Roman lands as refugees, gradually began to establish their own kingdoms. Roman authority was steadily weakening and fading away. According to some historians, the soul of Rome weakened as its belief system changed. Traditional Roman religion glorified the state and celebrated military success. With the adoption of Christianity, the loyalty of the people shifted from a worldly emperor to a divine authority. The church became a power independent of the state. While this transformation spread ideals of charity and peace throughout society, it also weakened the old Roman ideology. Warrior-like and state-centered, Rome was no longer the same. Its ideals and its purpose had fundamentally changed. The problem was not only economic or military, the social fabric of Rome was decaying as well. While the upper classes lived in luxury and excess, the lower classes were pacified by the policy of bread and circuses. Production gave way to consumption, education deteriorated, and corruption could no longer be contained. On the contrary, it came to be seen as something natural. The Roman people no longer thought about the future of the state. They cared only about feeding themselves for the day. And then the inevitable end arrived. In 410 AD, the Visigoths, under the leadership of Alaric, entered the eternal city of Rome. For the first time in 800 years, a sacred city that had never been trodden by a foreign army was sacked. The shock of this event was like the ancient world September 11th. It stunned the entire world. Though the city was not completely destroyed physically, psychologically, Rome was finished. On that day, the rest of the world realized that Rome was no longer untouchable. In 476 AD, when the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic leader Odoacer, the world barely took notice. By then, the Western Roman Empire had already lost its soul. The fall of Rome teaches us a crucial lesson. Civilizations are not destroyed by external enemies, but by internal decay. Rome fell, yet its legacy, its law, language, architecture, and political ideas continues to shape the modern world we live in today. Perhaps Rome never truly died. It merely changed form.